But objections to DNA collection in general continue to be heard, and often from the most surprising and far-flung quarters. In both New York City and the Australian state of Tasmania, lawmakers have proposed that the entire police force be fingerprinted. The logic is simple. Keep the police on file so their DNA can readily be excluded from any crime they might investigate. Remarkably, the measures were denounced by law enforcement bodies in both jurisdictions. Those presumed to be the most law-upholding of citizens, those whose work only promises to be facilitated by the widespread availability of DNA fingerprinting, want no part of it where their own DNA is concerned. My suspicion is that there is something of the irrational at play here. As in the case of genetically modified foods, DNA has in the popular imagination a voodoo quality. There's something scary, mysterious about it. And a lack of understanding of genetic complexities leaves one susceptible to the worst anxieties and conspiracy theories. Once people understand the issues, I hope this hesitation in making the most of a new and powerful beneficial technology will vanish. Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld put it well in the preface to their book, Actual Innocence. DNA testing is to justice what the telescope is for the stars, not a lesson in biochemistry, not a display of the wonders of magnifying glass, but a way to see things as they really are. What could be wrong with that? Chapter 11. Gene Hunting, the Genetics of Human Disease. It was too early in the day for anyone, let alone an impeccably dressed middle-aged woman, to be drunk. But as she swayed unsteadily across the street, drunk is what she seemed. Even to the cop on duty near the courthouse, who reprimanded her for creating a public spectacle. In fact, Leonore Wexler wasn't drunk at all. She was beginning to succumb to a ghastly fate that had already destroyed several close relatives before her eyes, a fate she had hoped would pass her by. Not long thereafter, in 1968, Wexler's ex-husband, Milton, was to celebrate his 60th birthday in Los Angeles with their two daughters, Alice, 26, and Nancy, 23. But celebration, as it turned out, was not the order of the day. Milton told his daughters that their mother, 53, was suffering from Huntington's disease, HD, a devastating neurological disorder that causes a progressive deterioration in brain function such that those afflicted gradually lose all knowledge of themselves and their loved ones. They also lose control of their arms and legs. At first, walking is affected, as in Leonore's case. But as the decline continues, patients also experience involuntary jerky movements. There was no cure and no treatment to delay the relentless slide toward death. Now, Alice and Nancy could make sense of some disquieting facts about their mother's relatives, as well as hints she herself had dropped that all was not right in the family. They knew that their uncles, Leonore's three brothers, had all died young. Before his end, each had developed the same strange grimace, unsteady walk, and slurred speech. They knew that Leonore's father, their grandfather, Abraham Sabin, had also died young, though Leonore had carefully never mentioned he too had shown those symptoms. Huntington's disease, it was becoming clear to them, ran in the family. It was Milton's grim task to answer their immediate question. What was the risk that Alice or Nancy might succumb? 50-50, their father told them. The disease that would afflict Abraham Sabin and his descendants was first identified by George Huntington. Born into a medical family, Huntington grew up in East Hampton, Long Island, where as a young boy he accompanied his father on his rounds. After qualifying as a physician at Columbia University, Huntington returned to the family practice on Long Island for a few years, before moving to Pomeroy, Ohio. In 1872 he presented a paper at the Meigs and Mason Academy of Medicine in nearby Middleport, entitled On Chorea. Derived from the Greek word for dance, chorea was the name physicians had, since the 17th century, given to illnesses that produced jerky movements in their victims. Late in life, Huntington would recount how he had come to be fascinated by the mysterious malady. Over 50 years ago, in riding with my father on his rounds, I saw my first case of that disorder, which was the way the natives always referred to the dreaded disease. I recall it as vividly as though it had occurred but yesterday. It made a most enduring impression upon my boyish mind, an impression which was the very first impulse to my choosing chorea as my virgin contribution to medical lore. Driving with my father through a wooded road leading from East Hampton to Amagansett, we suddenly came upon two women, both bowing, twisting, grimacing. I stared in wonderment, almost in fear. What could it mean? My father paused to speak with them, and we passed on. Then my Gamaliel-like instruction began. My medical instruction had its inception. From this point on, my interest in the disease has never wholly ceased.